In the past couple of months, I've been playing a wide variety of games. Atomic Heart, Destiny, Tears of the Kingdom, Destiny, Guardians of the Galaxy, Monster Hunter Rise, even a little bit of Destiny. As a result, I've recently started gravitating towards shorter experiences, one of which was a small puzzle game called Hue. It's a game that's similar in style to Limbo, but with a distinct identity to make it stand out. Released in 2016 by the developer Fiddlesticks, I had never heard about Hue until recently when it was free through Xbox Live Gold for a month. Its visuals and main mechanic immediately caught my attention, and I was interested to see if this game could live up to its potential. I saw the color switching and thought it was a very creative idea, with many avenues for making complex puzzles. So is it actually a good game? My short answer is yes, and my long answer is what the rest of this video is about. Let's talk about Hue. The greatest compliment I can give the visuals of this game is that the art style never sacrifices any visual clarity, instead always existing to support the gameplay while still looking great. The world of Hue exists entirely in black and white, but through manipulating the color of the world you can make objects look more vibrant. The ground, walls, and immovable terrain like ladders all remain obscured in darkness to easily distinguish what is and isn't a solid surface. Meanwhile, it's the objects in the world and the backgrounds of each screen that shift with the color to enforce the game's puzzles. All of these factors work together to form the excellent art style of Hue, being both visually appealing and creatively incorporated into the game's core mechanics. And even with the game's heavy use of colors, the developers were generous enough to add in a colorblind option. Enabling this will draw a unique shape on each color, allowing people to use these shapes as indicators instead of the colors themselves. I think this is the smartest way they could have implemented this feature, and although I didn't use it, I'm sure someone out there appreciates its existence. Complementing this unique visual style is a soothing and ambient soundtrack of piano music. While none of these songs stand out among the rest besides maybe the main theme, they were always pleasant to hear while working through a difficult puzzle. And although the music typically sunk into the background as I was more focused on puzzle solving, whenever I did clue into it again, I was really impressed by it. I have no qualifications to analyze or critique music, so I'll leave it with saying that the soundtrack is very nice, and I'd consider listening to it while doing homework. Plus it's on Spotify and YouTube for free, so you should listen to it as well, because it's wonderful. Typically in games like these, the story is often not told explicitly to the player. You have to piece it together yourself using subtle hints within the environments and world to have some semblance of what's really going on in the game. However, for Hue they instead opted to more directly explain the events occurring. The game begins in a dream sequence where a mysterious figure, later revealed to be the protagonist's mother, briefly explains how she was researching the notion of color in a monochrome world. She was developing a device that could allow someone to experience the world in color, but something went wrong and caused her to be trapped in some ethereal state between reality, an impossible color the game calls it. You're told that the pieces of this device have been scattered around the world, and it'll be your job to collect them all and save your mom. The setup is pretty basic, but it tells you everything you need to know to get the adventure started. This story is further developed through audio recordings found between large stretches of puzzle gameplay. These recordings are personal logs made by the main character's mother, detailing the experiences she had during her research. She describes what it was like to see in color the first time, talks about her conflicts with her supervisor named Dr. Gray, and how her perception of the world changed with every new color she witnessed. She became so consumed by her work that her experiments were considered unethical by the university, leading to her eventual termination from the institution. Despite this, she continued her research from home and put her goal of seeing the world in a new way above everything else, including her own son. In these audio logs, she ponders if all of her work even matters in the end, if some people are still content to live in blissful ignorance in a world devoid of color. She realizes that her pursuit for uncovering colors led her to neglect her own child, uprooting their entire lives to continue seeking the truth. Much like in our world how some people make it their job to search for the meaning of life or some solution to the universe, the rest of the population is content with living how they do now. They don't realize that there's more answers to find because they never consider if there's even more questions to ask. Not everyone needs to seek a higher truth, and it's okay to be happy and accept life as it is. This game reminds you that becoming consumed by something can make you lose sight of what's truly important in the world, which I think is a great message. By the end, I really enjoyed the story of this game. The developers could have left it simple or open to interpretation, but instead they told a simple but compelling story that fits wonderfully with the style of the game. It asks philosophical questions that get you thinking, but doesn't shy away from explaining what's happening without it feeling shoved in your face constantly. Much of the mother's dialogue is heartfelt and interesting to hear, and I appreciated the game allowing you to listen to it uninterrupted. But if you choose to ignore all of it entirely, then you really don't miss out on anything, and can continue to enjoy the game in peace. Speaking of which, let's discuss the game itself, since this story is meaningless without strong gameplay to drive the narrative. A big selling point of this game for me was the visual style and how it would be used to create interesting gameplay. The main mechanic of Hue, and what gives the game most of its flavor, is the color switching system. Upon starting the game, you exist in a monochrome world of no color. However, as you begin progressing through the game, you'll slowly unlock the ability to change the color of the world. You'll begin with just aqua as your first color, slowly completing your wheel with purple, orange, pink, red, blue, yellow, and finally lime. When playing on controller, you can easily switch colors by inputting a direction on the right stick, so by the end of the game I had memorized each color's position on the wheel, and it was satisfying being able to quickly change between them. Hue is divided into multiple areas that are completed in a set order, with each introducing new mechanics and building on the puzzles of the previous area. There is rarely a puzzle mechanic that is one and done, instead being brought forward into each successive area to be used in a new context or in a different way. One thing to note is that these areas do not have official names, so I'll be referring to them by their icons on the world map. The starting area where you begin is the harbor with no real puzzles and just some NPCs to chat with. The first real area is a waterfall level, with basic puzzles involving moving blocks and switching colors to create pathways. Sometimes there will be colored walls blocking an object from falling onto you, so you'll have to consider your position before changing colors to avoid being crushed. The second area is a fire level, where the block pushing escalates into moving different colored blocks through one another to arrange in a desired order. There is also one of the first chase rooms, where you need to run away from falling rocks by quickly rotating between your colors to make the way forward accessible. A twist on this same concept is once again seen here, where you need to move through a path of rolling rocks that are now colored, so you have to change the color to match that of the oncoming rock to avoid colliding with it. Most of the rooms here were block pushing puzzles, and by the end of this fire zone I was starting to feel some repetition. The puzzles were definitely still creative with how you needed to set up the blocks to make a staircase or a short pathway, but I was waiting for the next big shakeup to appear, and thankfully it did shortly after in the third level, the statues area. New additions to the gameplay formula here include doors that must be opened by switches, and falling skull obstacles that function like thwomps from Mario. These skulls will also occasionally be colored, so you can take advantage of that by jumping on top of them with good timing. You will also be asked to push blocks through rows of these skulls, using the block as cover while moving through these rooms. Then shortly after collecting another color, the colored balloons are introduced to suspend blocks in midair and lift yourself upwards to new heights. The new puzzle elements introduced in this level are used in very creative ways by the end of the zone, and it just goes to show how layered these puzzles are able to become without being overwhelming. The fourth area, the power station section, ups the ante with colored lasers that will kill you on contact. Some of these rooms will even have these lasers moving to force better awareness of your surroundings with more strategic color shifts. The blocks have also returned, this time used to obstruct different lasers to create safe pathways for yourself. Then a short way into the area, the lasers serve a secondary purpose of powering nodes to open doors, akin to completing a circuit connection. But oh no, we're not done yet. Not only are there lasers attached to these skulls, but now there are levers that power all electrical elements. But oh no, we're still not done yet. When I played Limbo over a year ago, I critiqued the game for having lots of ideas throughout but never bringing them together by the end for a grand finale. Limbo happily sprinkled a few ideas at a time without pushing the game to its limits. But I gotta say, the final stretch of Hue through its last two areas is fantastic. Now that you've acquired all of your colors, the game can really go all out with its last set of puzzles. In the mountain region, now they've introduced bouncy blocks that change their color after each bounce, and colored conveyor belts. In the penultimate university area, paint dispensers are added to change the color of any object that passes beneath it. This may be the only new mechanic found here, but it's arguably one of the most interesting for how it affects puzzles. Many of these final rooms can appear as an insurmountable challenge with how much stuff is going on, but you'll learn to break up different sections of each room into their own mini puzzles that slowly solve the main one by the end. I hope that explaining in depth all of the different puzzle elements introduced throughout the game, you can understand just how intricate these final sets of screens become. The University Zone will take any random combination of these different elements to create a refreshing and new puzzle that feels unique from the ones that came before it. While I never found Hue too difficult, there were a few puzzles that had me stumped for a long time, and I still don't think I could recall how I did them if I did another playthrough. Overall, I was really impressed with how Hue wrapped up by the end, and had a great time putting together everything I learned to conquer the final stretch of the game. It really felt like a grand finale with how it culminated so many different elements together, and I wish more games in this style would take notes. If there was one idea I wished Hue would have experimented with, it would be mixing colors together to form new ones. If you push one block into another, then change to a color that allows both blocks to be visible, their colors will combine as you would expect colors to. I was expecting the later puzzles to incorporate this into the late game areas, but nothing ever came of it besides for acting as a visual indicator of two overlapping objects. While that is nice, it would have been cool to see the mixing of colors become an interesting mechanic. Alas, it did not happen, and I can't take points off of this game for not using a puzzle idea that I had while playing, but it still feels like somewhat of a missed opportunity. There are also side collectibles scattered throughout the world in the form of beakers. These beakers are most often hidden off screen just out of sight from the main room, or through a secret passage in a wall with no collision. There's hardly any puzzles involved in finding all 28 of these beakers around the game, instead being more of a test of noticing something just out of your field of view. I found at least half of the beakers during my first run of the game, but after completing the final area I went back to collect all the ones I'd missed using a guide. I wouldn't care to do this for most games, but I had enough fun with Hue and wanted the 100 gamer score for finding them all, so I decided to pursue this side objective. However, this unfortunately led me to one of the more frustrating aspects of Hue, the annoying backtracking required for 100% completion. In Limbo, for example, you could travel back through the whole game to individual screens. But in Hue, you can only teleport to the entrances of each area, so if you're missing a beaker that's at the end of a zone, you better be prepared to replay the entire section of the game from its beginning. But you might be thinking why I didn't collect the beakers as I went through the game the first time. Well, as it turns out, some of these passageways leading to beakers are blocked off by certain colors, meaning that there's a couple instances in this game where you'll be forced to backtrack or replay puzzles anyways for these. So the most efficient way to find all of these collectibles is to play through the game to unlock every color, then going through the game a second time to get each of the previously inaccessible beakers. This means redoing all of the puzzles a second time, some of which can be very long, and walking through each of the empty rooms that existed only to listen to an audio log or give you a new color, some of which can be very long. This could have been a fun bonus activity to get more out of the game, but is instead designed to artificially inflate your playtime. Thankfully, this game is pretty short as long as you're not getting stuck on the puzzles, so it's not like you have to trudge through several hours just to collect the items you missed. Hue was one of the most unexpected games I played this year. I saw the potential immediately from the store page and hoped that the game would be able to capitalize on it, and thankfully, Hue delivered in both style and substance. After finishing the game and earning 100% completion after 6.5 hours, I could easily recommend Hue for any fan of short puzzle games like this. It might not have blown my mind or changed my outlook on life, and the backtracking required to collect each of the beacons was definitely a pain in the ass, but I was still left satisfied and happy with my time spent playing it. For all of the months that Xbox Live Gold has delivered unimpressive games, I'm glad we got this one diamond in the rough. Thank you for watching.